And we are live, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Coach Mo Murphy podcast. As always, I am your host, Coach Mo. And with me, we are back. It's been a couple weeks. And with me back in the building, I got my guy, Jeff Hunt of the Jeff Needs Sports podcast, former co-VP of the Off the Ball Network. No matter, the network always, it came to an end, but it was a great run. And obviously, it sparked the great conversations that me and Jeff have that actually people that are fans of my show really love. They love us talking college football. They think it's a match made in heaven. And Jeff, I always do too. And it's always an honor to have you on the show. How's it going, Jeff?
Great, man. I know we've been avoiding each other for a couple weeks due to a lot of unforeseen circumstances. A lot's happened, but I'm so glad you got me on this week. Anybody that's listening to my show, I think this is the 6th or 7th season of me doing a show. Rivalry week is about my favorite time of the sports calendar, or I consider it like an event, like a weekend event. Of course, it's not March Madness because of the length of it, but as far as 1 week, and it's different now, and we're going to talk about how some of it's better, some of it's worse. It's totally different than it used to be, just a pride thing, and it was just it was just literally like who won, who took home the Goofy Trophy, and the bragging rights, and now it has connotations of playoff expectations and seedings and things like that. So it's different, but it's still one of my favorite times of the year. And I'm glad you have me on to talk about it.
Yeah. And so this past weekend, the week before Rivalry week, which is usually that week is kind of like a surprisingly dead week. Like college football has given you so much all year, but that week before Rivalry week, and I know, that's been the topic of conversation because, SEC takes one of their non-conference games and plays them towards the end of the season. Yeah. You can have that argument all day. You know what? Let's start there. I don't want to have the Big Ten SEC argument, Jeff. I want to have, I'm going to say a statement that I know you agree with, and I think people need to understand this. All these Big Ten people are having this argument. All these SEC people are having this argument, Big Ten versus SEC. And then they always, whether it's Big Ten or SEC, their common ground is we're going to attack Ohio State and attack Ohio State fans. And then Ohio State fans have to come in these arguments, and we're in these debates. Well, not even arguments, but we're in these debates, and it's backs against the wall because, if we stand up for the Big Ten, well, the rest of the Big Ten is weak. That's what the SEC says. But the Big Ten, you guys think you're so much better than everybody, but you haven't beat Michigan in a couple of years, and da-da-da. That'll be the topic of conversation that brings Ohio State into it. And I really want people to tell you, in the argument of Big Ten versus SEC, Ohio State fans do not care about the rest of the Big Ten. When they represent Ohio State in that conversation, they do not care what Michigan is. They do not care what USC is. They do not care what Oregon is. We do not care who Wisconsin is. We do not care about Penn State. We don't care about these other Big Ten schools. We do not wake up. If we watch the premier games, Ohio State fans watch just as much SEC football as SEC fans. Why? Because the only time they're probably not watching the SEC is when they're watching Ohio State. We watch the premier games. We watch the must-see games on TV. We do not care about the rest of the Big Ten. We're not watching Michigan all season to see how we're not watching Washington after. You might watch deep in on them the week before you play them, but you don't. After you beat Washington, you don't really care what they do for the rest of the season. You don't care what they add to your resume argument. Sure, it's all nice because that becomes part of the conversation for college football. But in the overall, we do not care. It's about what Ohio State does against any of those teams, whether it's Big Ten or SEC. Is what we think we do in the conversation. What we did in the college football playoff last year, beat 2 SEC teams. Beat Notre Dame in the national championship. That's it's all about Ohio State, but we don't take pride in Michigan winning a national championship for the Big Ten.
Right.
We don't care that the conference has won back to back. That's become a big argument, but Ohio State fans are not arguing that. We're the reigning defending national champions. That's where we're arguing. We don't care that Michigan won. We're not going to stand on that being part of our argument for where we stand, and you can say whatever about our strength. Right. So I just wanted to say that because I think people think Ohio State fans care about the rest of the Big Ten, and we don't.
It's weird. And
how we hold in this conversation, not the rest of the conference.
And it is a little different, especially it really is an age bracket thing because I mean, obviously I talk to a million more Ohio State fans than you do just because I live,
Right.
in the center of it. And there are a huge portion of fans, and it comes from, and I know it's hard to remind people of these days when you voted on national champions, and there were times you had to vote for who went to the Rose Bowl. There weren't a million bowl games. Really good teams didn't have chances to play. So there was something to it back then as far as like conference pride and like, and all these things because it actually affected your team. But like you
Right.
say, now that it's a national thing, I mean, we play in a conference, but like none of the major conferences, again, if you're good enough, you're going to go. Nothing's going to hold you up, and all these things. So I agree. So there is still a population of people that are diehard. Like they refer to the Big Ten as us, and of course, I am not on that page. So it's a constant. I'll say a polite way to say it, conversation between me and quote unquote Big Ten fans. But here's what I will say that's funny about most of these Big Ten fans. You just nailed it, Mo. They really don't watch the games. Like they look at the scores the next day and they're like, oh, well, at least so and so, like at least this big team X beat this other team Y, but they really didn't watch the games. And then you just nailed it. But what we do watch is I watched Tennessee, Florida Saturday night. I watched Missouri, Oklahoma. So you kind of nailed it with probably, and I do think there's a swing now. Honestly, a lot of it's just a generational thing to where there are more people that watch as a national broadcast. And then there are still just diehard Big Ten fans that like also don't watch the SEC and will say stuff like, well, I don't think Texas A&M's that good because they looked up one time and Texas A&M wasn't winning. They didn't watch the game.
Right.
You know what I mean? They didn't do what Mo and Jeff does and go back and look at how they just saw a score and were like, I don't think the SEC is as good as people think. And that's where people like me and Mo are like, well, I think you're wrong. There's some really good teams down there, just like there's some really good teams in the Big Ten, and Texas A&M's a really good team. And I bet you believe Georgia's a really, really good team because you've watched them play football. So there is a divide. It goes for the SEC too. I bet there's millions of SEC fans that don't watch one Michigan game until this weekend when they play Ohio State. And all they know is Michigan beats Ohio State. They have no idea. They probably couldn't name quarterback. They probably couldn't name a player, a coach, anything. But all they know in their mind is a conversation piece. If they see me and you wearing a Ohio State hat, they can have that conversation, even though they've probably not watched them play a minute of football here. So I bet it goes both ways. But I do agree with that. There's still the population out there that cares a lot about conference pride. I don't get it. I have a lot of people that are like, well, I hope the Big Ten wins again. At least it's 3 in a row. And I'm like, well, I don't, if it's not Ohio State, I don't feel that way. Yeah. I don't know about you, Mo.
Like I'm not one
if it's not Ohio State, like I don't care who wins it. I'm
not taking pride in the Indiana national championship.
No. Oh my God.
Like I don't, that's
just
that's
for you
not
to say it out loud.
Yeah. Like
upsets me a little bit.
I'm not doing that. But so speaking of our conference, USC and Oregon was the premier matchup out of our conference.
Okay.
That was a game that I watched.
Weird.
Like, yeah, but that was a game that I watched. Now,
100%.
3 years ago, that's a premier matchup out of another conference. That is the Pac-12 playing at 3:30 p.m.
And
Eastern.
we would have watched it too, by the way.
Exactly. So it wasn't a Big Ten thing like USC, Oregon. Also, that was USC playing to stay alive as far as keep their playoff hopes alive. That was Oregon for
quick, like USC was also playing to keep their whatever their path right now is alive. I think they needed that game for the bigger question, the bigger picture too.
Yeah, and like even for the foreseeable, like for the future, like even and there's questions coming out of USC right now. There's questions about Lincoln Riley, and there's a lot of job openings right now. So if there was some unease between the SoCal fans and Lincoln Riley, if there was ever an opportunity, if there was ever a window where you could find you a really good job, just as good of a job as USC, or you could look at it that way, it would at least be a lateral move and not, a downgrade. It would be right now with some of those jobs that are available. So that's something that's been of conversation. But for Oregon, to me, them winning in basically dominant fashion, they were was dominant for that type of game. Like when two ranked teams play each other, I don't expect a team to win by 30. So when you basically, once you took the lead, once you were up, nobody you never really thought in a point that USC, they were playing from behind the whole time. You never really thought
Oregon
USC
controlled the game for sure.
Yeah, for the entire game. USC had like a glimpse of hope, in that third, like early in that fourth quarter. But other than that, it was Oregon's game. And so in that light, Dan Lanning went on to use this as his point of his argument about the Big Ten. And to me, that's what I find, like, that's what even sparked this, is Dan Lanning, instead of using it to just talk about Oregon and what we are in the grand scheme of things and what we plan on do and what you'll have to come see this team in December, he took it upon himself to take responsibility as being a representative of speaking for the Big Ten. And that's the issue that I have. Like, I feel like if that was Ryan Day, like, I would have that same issue. Ryan Day would be like what we did, what Ohio State did. It ain't about the conference. It ain't about, you have to see, it would have been his marketing tool for, this is why we'll be a playoff team and this is why you'll see us in December and we'll have another shot, as opposed to not being able to play for the conference championship. But Oregon looked really, really good.
I was going to say, and Oregon, just a couple
Oregon
things.
Looked really, really good.
I was going to say a couple things to add.
Make a run.
Yeah, a couple things to add on is also Oregon's in the playoffs. And Lanning's in.
And that's why he didn't have to say anything in the conference, because you're in the playoffs anyway. Like,
I was going to ask you, do you feel though, like I love this conference talk. I know we get sidetracked by some good conversations sometimes, but do you feel more Big Ten affiliated now that it is a bigger power conference with the addition of Oregon, USC, in the Pac? Now I feel a little bit. I feel a little. It's weird. I feel more like Oregon is part of a Big Ten conference now than I do. I don't know, Northwestern or maybe whoever's not a factor in the playoffs. But like, I feel that Oregon's the first team out of the newcomers that are like all in. Like, I feel it's a Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan. I won't disrespect them. Penn State. I feel it's their conference now. I really do.
Oregon came in accepting that, like, Oregon did what USC should have did, which is come in being the loudmouth but they put a play on the field and they won.
And I feel USC still not comfortable.
Bro, and like Dan Lanning, remember they came into the Big Ten Media Day with the duck in the river. Like, they had the huge inflatable. Like, Dan Lanning has played buying into, his welcome to the Big Ten. He had his moment. He won the Big Ten championship last year. Like, they came in and won the conference. He made a statement. So I do think Dan Lanning cares about
beat Ohio State.
Yeah, beat Ohio State. Like,
he's the only other Big Ten team that's beat Ohio State in recent memory, besides the Michigan that was already established. So this guy came in, beat Ohio State, and got his ass kicked by Ohio State. In 1 year in the Big Ten, Lanning's been through the up and down. So I think he feels indoctrined into, I don't know, USC, beating Michigan. I don't know if this Michigan, it's a good win, but I don't know if that established them as like a conference power yet. That's where Oregon came in, kicked everybody right in the teeth. They've beat Penn State twice. They've beat Ohio State. They've beat Michigan. So like, they came in. So I think they're just indoctrined a little bit more. I swear Washington's still looking for, that next step. UC is looking for the next step. UCLA, obviously, like, big upset.
Their one loss is to this Indiana team that's going to be playing in the Big Ten championship. Like, so they basically, and they're
going to be 2 playoffs. They're going to be 2 playoffs in a row.
I'm sure they're rooting for, Michigan to beat Ohio State in the grand scheme of things of being able to play in the Big Ten championship game. But at this point, like, Oregon is a playoff team. Dan Lanning and them, they played their way in.
And guess what? Don't have to play in that stupid championship game either, Mo.
Yeah, and probably host a home playoff game. So, they'll be out there in Eugene, Oregon in December, being able to light it up, probably a nighttime game. Obviously, that being a West Coast game, that's probably going to be a nighttime game. Or it could be one of those early kickoff midday for us on the East Coast. But even with all of that, that leads us kind of really into rivalry week. The game is the game, Jeff. Ohio State
it's here, buddy.
Team up north. Like, and to me, it's always been this week, like you said, like, this game matters to me no matter where we're at and no matter where they're at, like, in their season, no matter what this game means to them in the national eyes of, if they beat us, they go on to maybe make the playoffs or whatever. Like, it just matters because it's us versus Michigan. And right now, like, I talked to Jay about, I talked to our good friend Jay about this. And when it comes to the Michigan, like, when they beat us the first time a couple of years ago, nobody really cared. Like, okay, we lost. It hurts as an Ohio State fan. Like, you never want to lose to Michigan, but we were on such a streak. You understand, like, we weren't going to beat them for the next 70 years every year. So, like, you took that loss. Let Ryan Day live. You didn't care. The second time, eyebrows were raised. Everybody looking like, whoa. Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. This is not about to be a thing, is it? Yeah. Then all the pressure was on that Kyle McCord game. Like, no way we gonna let Michigan run off 3 in a row. And they did it. And then it became like, Jeff, going into last season, it was what? Like, if Ryan Day don't win this game, he's fired.
Yep.
And he didn't win that game, Jeff. He lost. He lost his 4th in a row, Jeff. Now, he went on to, if anybody could ever ask for forgiveness in any better way, nobody could do it in any better fashion than to beg for forgiveness by winning a national championship. But now, to me, that is now why this game this year matters so much. Like, you're sitting here 11-0. You graduated a class that didn't win a conference championship and didn't beat Michigan. You've already done that. That is under your belt. Are you trying to do that again? Like, do you want another class to leave? You know, these seniors have mentioned, like, we will be leaving with, we don't want to leave with no gold pants, no conference championship. We already won the national championship. So, like, for some, you don't want that to be where you have classes. This is a thing of people just leaving under their belt without wins against Michigan. And so you got to win this game. You've graduated a class that hasn't done it, that's never going to be able to say that they got their gold pants. But this time around, you look like hands down the best team in the country. You look like right now, nobody could play on the field with you and beat you for 4 quarters, let alone this Michigan team. So I think, to me, this game is just, it's all about a statement. Everybody say they played this cupcake schedule, and not that Michigan is going to be the ultimate schedule booster, but like, it's a ranked opponent at the end of the season. Like, you're playing a ranked opponent on the road. So it's going to be a respectable win. And I told Jay this on Locked On Buckeyes, like, everybody is going to respect Ohio State for winning this game no matter how they win it. It's going to be a respectable win. The only people that'll be dissatisfied and criticizing Ohio State for the win will be Ohio State fans. They will be the only ones that'll walk away not satisfied with how this game goes in a win. Other than that, in the national landscape, Ohio State's going to get the respect. They're already the number 1 team in the country, but nobody's going to bat an eye if it took Ohio State a game-winning field goal to win, because of the failure that Ryan Day has had under his belt over the past few years. It's like a redemption game for Ohio State. It is crazy to me. Ohio State's playing as like a redemption story, Jeff, as the number 1 team in the country.
It's a weird situation to be in. There's a lot of things going into this, but again, it's another one of those things that I have the perspective of, I've seen this story. I've seen this mental block before. I lived through the 90s. I understand that it's a real thing. I've seen several, undermanned Michigan teams beat Ohio State. Some of them beat them soundly. It was all mental. There's always more pressure on the Buckeyes in this game, just because we don't accept the losses like that team up north does, and they can say what they want. I just know, I've done the research. I've talked to enough fans. They love the wins, and they love to beat Ohio State. Ohio State wants to win every game so much that, like for instance, last year, there's no world where Ohio State can lose 5 games and beat Michigan and we're cool with it. I'm just telling you that right now. Like, that still would have got Day fired. So, like, there's a different standard, but now it's just ridiculous. It's been 6 years of our lives that we've lived, without a victory. And they all haven't been great. And Day did win the national championship last year. You already spoke on the other ones. Honestly, those other 3 seasons were complete failures. We didn't do anything with, those teams. So, and I think the biggest difference in this year, like last year, the outcome, I was fine. I really don't care about that loss. We got the national championship, irrelevant, didn't have to play the dumb Big Ten championship game. All these things are true. This year's a little different because Day has put himself into a corner because he slow played this season. He load managed. He never he never stepped on the gas pedal that he claims he has. We're going to find out. He never turned up the heat. He never went for the jugular on a team. He never tried to embarrass a team. He rotated everybody. He did everything that you should do if you plan on playing a long playoff run. But what I would say that he's put himself into a situation, though, is that if he loses to Michigan, then what did you really do? Unless you're going to win the national championship again. I understand that. But let's say he doesn't. So if he does this all year and we're kind of like a ho-hum season, and honestly, like a lot of it, on the field, we haven't played a lot of dynamic quarterbacks, and we haven't beat a lot of teams that were physically equal. And all these things are true. And so if you lose this one, then you've lost the mental side of it. You've lost the physical side. You've lost the talent side. You've lost it in every way that you can lose it. And you're going to go up there. And as of right now, I believe it's at game time, we're talking like 35 degrees and snow. And so if you go up there and get punked again, now here comes the softness, that comes back. Here comes the, can't win everything that he erased last January comes back immediately. And that's why I think there's so much pressure. The other side of it is it's equal. Michigan can get into the playoffs. They have everything to play for in this game, which helps Ohio State because now you're equal footing. Nobody's playing with house money, so to speak. Everybody's on the same page. And usually when that happens, it's a pretty good game. Even those other 3 years were, or those, I guess not the first one, but decent games when everything was on the line. Even when Urban was finishing up his run against Harbaugh, like they were still battles because you had good teams playing for everything. So I think Ohio State plays better, and they proved it in the playoffs. They proved it against Texas. They've proved it over and over against Penn State. When it's kind of equal, when you have equal pressure, Ohio State does really well because they play with that every single snap of the season. So, yes, this would be a massive failure for them to not finish this off. The only thing I do like about it is Oregon would get to go to the Big Ten championship game, and we could prepare for the playoffs. Only upside to losing this game whatsoever, and I'm not going to deny that, but I would rather lose to Rutgers and beat Michigan this year. So it's but yeah, we need this. And honestly, fans just kind of need it. You know what I mean? Like young fans don't remember what it was like. Like it just feels good. We just kind of need one. I'm not saying they got to win everyone like they used to, but this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah, and I agree with you. At this point, it's just ridiculous. Like to have where it's not like this team across the other side is more talented, this, that, and the other. It's almost like every other time it's been us. Like whether it's ego gets in the way, no matter what it is, like it's been we're the reason why we haven't been winning these games. And like you said, he kind of slow walked the dog as far as getting to this game, and was basically the expectation was that we're going to come out guns blazing. Now, obviously, some injuries have people thinking that the outcome is going to be a little bit different as far as the game plan going into this game. But at the same time, you just have to have the same mentality, and it's just win. Like all you got to do is win. All you got to do is be 12-0 to play in that conference championship game. In the slow pace of play that you've gone and kind of slow walk the dog being undefeated has told everybody like that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to be healthy for these moments. To beat this Michigan team, you're trying to be ready to go to win the Big Ten championship and to be undefeated and go and win a back-to-back national championship. And so in order for them to do that, they have to beat this Michigan team. And so, like you said, it's just ridiculous. Like it's almost unexplainable. It's like you just get tired of like, come on now. Like we're too talented to be losing this game. Like this Michigan team is not better than Ohio State. So if they find a way to win, it's just
there
ridiculous.
You go. And it's another one of those things too. Like, okay, we can't count on to win back-to-back national championships is going to be one of the hardest things that any team can do in a modern era. So like, I think it'd be ridiculous to sit here and say, I think it would be, let's put it this way. I'm just going to straight up say it. I think it would be easier just to beat Michigan and get this monkey off the back than to win another national championship. And I don't think that's crazy to say that it would be easier to win one game than 4. So let's go ahead and just win this one. We'll all feel good, and then we'll see what happens. If you do it all, then you're going to have the greatest season in Ohio State history. But if not, at least we'll have the Michigan win. Like, you got to give us one or the other. What they can't do, if you want to hear the most negative take, there's a world where they can lose in 3 games in a row and have the biggest failure of a season that we've seen a good team have. Like that's on the table as we speak. You know, they got Michigan, you know what I mean? Then they can have, well, I guess they can only lose 2 in a row. So worst case. I'm just saying, let's just get this done.
Honest. Yeah, it's like, and that's, just get it done, get it with. Like, let's end this part of, like, let's end this being a conversation point during the season. Like,
yes,
once you win this game, like next year, this isn't that big of a topic until, like, now you have to beat us again for us to care. Like, because we couldn't just roll off another 3, 4, or 5.
Last year, they used the losses fuel that team because that's how that team was built. Like that team's personality was, this team will crumble under it because they will be like, how did we waste this? Like, I think it will break them if they don't win it. I don't think they'll handle it the same way. I think this team needs to win this game. This team wins this game. I don't care what happens against Indiana. Going to the playoffs, I give them a great shot. But I believe they need to get this win. I really do think it's important for the mentality of this particular team because Day has told them all year, here's how we're going to do it. Y'all, all you great players, you're going to sacrifice yards. You're going to sacrifice touchdowns. You're going to sacrifice playing time. We're going to win all these games. Then we're going to kick the crap out of Michigan and we're going to make a playoff run. So if you don't do that, then you've got a bunch of players that, like Julian saying, can be like, well, I could have thrown for 6,000 yards if he's going to do this, coach. You know what I mean? I'd be over there like Indiana, just throwing, you know what I mean? Just putting up yards and numbers if this is how it was going to go. So I think it's really important to finish this statement. Like Ryan Day to, follow up on his word and be like, I know how good you are. You're ready for this moment. No, I do think Patricia's going to be ready for the moment. I do think they're ready for the moment. I really do. I don't think they're going to cower, but also I'm telling you, when that ball is 32 degrees, things happen. So like you're a bad break away from, ruining, what's been a great season. So yeah, there's something to worry about, but Ohio State's a better team.
And should go out there and handle business even though they're on the road. Like, just this game has to mean something to them, and if it does, and this is everything that they really, because you can say it, but your actions show it. Like if this is everything that we built for it to be able to get this job done, you'll know.
My son said
out Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate, like everybody else also prepared for this same moment.
Yeah.
So even if we don't have them, like even if we don't have those two, like you'll be able to tell if this was the game plan for the season all along, everybody else will still be bought into that being the plan, and so you'll play that way on the field.
My son said he's right. We'll know as soon as the game starts what this team's up. Like you'll know the mentality of this game as soon as the game starts. You'll know where their head's at and what they're ready for and what they're prepared for, and if they're ready to win it. We'll know right away.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
This is in rivalry week. This is one of the weirdest games. Not because like we're so used to it being a rival, but it even could spark a discussion. Like, and so I'm going to ask this question.
Okay.
What do you think about rivalries not being within conference? And there's a couple that apply to this that now in this 12-team playoff era, soon to be, I think, 16, I think the fact that like Georgia Tech, and it's not a knock on Georgia because I think Georgia Tech, like I think Georgia could, I don't know if Georgia will lose to Georgia Tech, but I think this is a respectable win if Georgia beats Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying on rivalry week, it being like, because it's Georgia Tech, it makes it a weak opponent at the end because your rival could just be absolutely bad. Tennessee could be 12-0. Any other year, Vanderbilt's been one of the worst teams in college football history. So like, it's not about whether this is a good team, a good test. Like your rival is your rival, and a lot of it's based on location. A la Georgia and Georgia Tech. But what it does is in an era of a 12-team playoff, neither Georgia Tech or Georgia, it has no effect on their following week by playing in this game. So like if Georgia Tech is not playing in the ACC championship as of today, beating Georgia is not going to get them in there. Whatever they need to fall, they're going to need to fall, whether they win or lose this game.
Yeah.
Georgia is in the SEC championship, whether they win this game or not, because this is not
They've
a
already locked it up.
And they beat Ole Miss, so they win the tiebreaker. They only have one conference loss. So it just makes it a weird dynamic. But you also have like Florida and Florida State would make it, if Florida was in this conversation, if Florida was a top tier team and Florida State was a top tier team in the ACC this year, it was spark for the same thing that if I'm Vanderbilt and Tennessee and I'm playing for a playoff spot where essentially like two teams cross conference are both guaranteed spots in their conference championship next year, and it's not a conference loss. It does no damage for them. All they got to do is just go and win. Like it sometimes those scenarios happen within conference, but for two good teams to be playing like a 9-2 Georgia Tech, if they were in the SEC, beating Georgia probably would be everything.
Yeah.
Or if Georgia was 8-1 or 10-1 in this game playing at Georgia Tech, but Georgia was in the ACC, Georgia Tech beating Georgia would mean everything. So it's not about Georgia Tech not being in a stronger conference. It kind of changed the implications of some of these games of very good teams.
And you're right. And the NCAA has that. I shouldn't even call it the NCAA. It's not like they manage any of this shit, but college football has that issue because you're right. If we're gonna, this is what always bothers me about the conference championship games. Like we say that they're important, but just like you said, well then why do some teams, like Georgia could just take the week off? I mean, is what you're saying. They could just take a bye week, and if they feel like taking a loss and saving themselves or whatever they can. As to where you got Texas A&M playing for their lives. Texas A&M, is in, but I mean, Texas playing for their life. So it's like, if you're going to say that this is how we're going to do it and that the conference championship games are going to matter, you got to even out the schedule to where at the end of the year, it's sort of even. And as far as viewership, just like the NFL, that's why they put all the division games at the end of the year. So teams can't sit guys and not play. You don't want to know. So like, so there is something to that. And I know some of them, they have changed, like Pittsburgh, West Virginia don't play every year anymore and things like that. They have, but it is weird. But then you also have teams like, you got like Notre Dame and SC is a rivalry. Why would USC keep that? Like why put an extra chance at a loss on your schedule for no reason other than because it's a rivalry? So, and things like that are weird too. So like they need to come up with a little more balance in the schedule and figure. I know you can't guess who's going to be like Washington. Oregon's playing Washington. That's a good game at the end of their year. As to where Indiana's playing Purdue, it's not a good game. And Georgia.
But that happens. Like that's what they exactly. Everybody's going to be good. Like this Tennessee Vanderbilt is going to be prime time must see TV for rivalry week because Vanderbilt's really good, and that's not something that you're accustomed to seeing. But even like what's wrong with taking like Georgia, Florida, and Georgia Tech and flopping where they play at the end of the year. Yes. Because Florida State, what's wrong with flopping where Florida State plays, when Georgia plays Georgia Tech, Florida plays Florida State. And then you flop in Georgia, Florida is such a rivalry, they play at the end of the year.
Maybe put a cutoff on the rivalry games. Like you have to have them in by week 6.
Yeah, like nobody said you don't have to get rid of Georgia Tech on the schedule, but just with all this 12-team playoff stuff, just play them in week 5 instead of play them right before you get into the gritty of conference play, as opposed to playing them at the end of the year. Just flopping those games would be played. You want to open up in the first month with that game. Let that be one of your first 4 games.
And there was a world it would have been more extreme if Georgia Tech hadn't pooped themselves. They wouldn't need this week either. You would have 2 teams that have no reason to play each other playing a quote unquote rivalry game. If Georgia Tech would have maintained their course, they'd be in the SEC championship game. They would either way. They have nothing to play for this week. I mean, I guess they could try and sneak in a spot. They're not probably going to get it. So it's like you had a world to where this game, the game was be completely irrelevant to both teams. Why would you put anybody out there to get hurt? You know what I mean? So like, I totally see what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess like Georgia Tech, if they were to pop Georgia and be 10-2, like that puts on their
there you go. That's one-sided though. Only one team.
Right. Because Georgia loses this game, they're still playing in the SEC championship. So they're going to have a game where obviously if you just win your conference, you're automatically in.
I suppose there's a world to where Georgia wouldn't want an extra loss in case they lose in the SEC championship game. So
right, but just for the sake of the game, you just go win the SEC championship. Like, because if you know you have to play in that game in order, like they have to play in this game no matter what.
Yeah.
So like, sure, you could afford yourself. Well, if I lose in the SEC championship, then I'll be okay. Like I'll still be a 2-loss team, or I'll be 11 and whatever. But I just, I don't know. Like it's one of those weird games. Not that it doesn't, because this game could matter.
No, I think it's a good point to bring up though. Like, and yeah, Kentucky, Louisville's the same way. And I know a lot of this stuff was manufactured over time. It's not all their fault, but I think it would be a good idea to
changes. We need to start
Yeah.
as we're in the modern era of college football, as guys are getting paid. Like, there's nothing wrong with flipping schedules for it to make sense for all conferences where you align. Like, rivalry week, everybody in their conference has a rival in their conference that they could play in rivalry week.
Yeah.
So Georgia Tech is not a bigger game than Georgia Florida.
Tell me if this is a better
about Georgia Tech as much as they care about Florida. So there's no way you can tell me they would have any issue with
the only people that care. That it's not like Ohio State, Michigan, where everybody in the country cares one way or another. They do.
Right.
Georgia Tech. I'll peek at it and I'll know, but I could not tell you right now if you asked me. Tell me the record of the last 20 years. Couldn't even guess. Don't care. Couldn't guess. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't. So, but maybe there's a world like, what about this scenario? Is it time to start? We kind of know where these teams are going to be in a year or 2 year period. We kind of get a feel for how good a team is going to be. Is it time to start building the schedule around, kind of like the NFL does? Like, hey, we know here's like a first place schedule. So maybe like if there's a year to where it's a little more lopsided, like, oh, wait a minute. Actually, Ohio State, Oregon, we're going to play them the last game of the year instead of Ohio State, Michigan. That's an extreme example. But like you said, maybe Georgia, like, Florida looks like this year of Georgia, Florida at the beginning of the year would have looked like a good matchup at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's time to schedule, and then you can balance. So like last week, we could have put at least 2 great games on last week instead of having this worthless schedule. Because of they let the SEC schedule the way they did. Maybe we spread the rivalries out, and instead of having rivalry week, we have like each week we're kind of like at the beginning of the season they guarantee these big matchups, but throughout the season they go by these traditional layouts, and we wind up having these. And again, I think Texas, Oklahoma does it great. They know they're going to play that same weekend in October. They're going to. I have no problem with that. We've established that it's in the middle of the season. If one of the teams is bad, you don't miss anything. If they're both great, it's awesome in the middle of the season. But like I think you're on to something. But towards, and I know we're talking about a select few games or whatever, but it's still a television program. Like it's a TV show. College football is a TV show. I mean, it means a lot to like a certain percentage of us, but it really is just entertainment. So let's do the best to put the best product. I think last weekend was a bad weekend for modern college football. I really do. I think people like tuned it in. They're like, who's watching this? You know what I mean? Like, so number 1 team in the country is playing a dud. Like, it just was a dud game. Like, that the number 1 team in the country, there's honestly, no risk of an upset. I mean, I even know it was tense or whatever. Like, it didn't look fun as opposed to like, if you let's build our schedules a little top bottom heavy, so to speak.
Yeah, or not so far, not 5, 6
just balance it a little.
Yeah, and also just not build where we're building where we know who we're playing 10 years from now. Like, we know what the schedule is going to look like 10 years from now.
Yeah, but you're right.
Like, and in that conversation is not to say like I don't think Georgia is playing a cupcake game by playing Georgia Tech.
No, but it's not the same as what Alabama's
just
doing.
For them in the grand, yes, where like in Alabama with obviously having 2 losses too, that's another game that matters. Like the Iron Bowl, why does it matter this weekend? I mean, first off, it's Alabama, it's Auburn, like the second biggest game of rivalry week. They'll hate to say it. They'll argue all day that they are a bigger deal, a bigger game played than Ohio State and Michigan, but the game is number 1, and the Iron Bowl, respectfully, is the second most important game on rivalry week. And why is it important this year? Because if Auburn don't have anything else to play for, they have an opportunity to knock Alabama out of the playoff.
And they've done it.
And so if Auburn wins this game, like, they have some pride within the rivalry, and with having fired your head coach, like, to end the season by knocking your biggest rival, one of the biggest games in the country, like, of the year, it's going to be one of the most viewed games being played at primetime television on a Saturday night. But like, if you do this, like, you knock Alabama pretty much completely out of the playoffs. Like, a 9-3 Alabama no longer has a conversation without playing in the SEC championship. I don't think we'll see a 3-loss team in this college football playoffs unless a 3-loss team wins their conference. So essentially, Auburn has an opportunity to knock Alabama out of the playoffs
Same
unless
with
a whole bunch of things went whack. And then we start bringing up where basically I think the two teams that would pop into my head right now would be if Texas beat Texas A&M, then you start arguing about Texas and Alabama would be the first 3-loss teams that you would say would have an argument. And
I think if Texas beats Texas A&M, they deserve to get in. If it's an argument, I really do. I think Texas is playing good ball. I think they started late in the season. I'm not saying they should, but if we start arguing, and there's not going to be a lot of openings left, but if you tell me if Texas beats Texas A&M, which I consider Texas A&M very good, I would consider that a really, 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 really good victory, and I could see Texas having the argument. Now, the especially like I don't know, yeah.
Now, you know what the sneaky game is, though, Jeff? The sneakiest game of rivalry weekend that I'm sure SEC fans are aware of. So this is us kind of snooping into SEC business in a sense as well, is that Ole Miss and Mississippi State game. Now, here's why that is one of the sneakiest games based on outcome.
Okay.
Because if Mississippi State beats Ole Miss, that's really all Mississippi State has to play for. Ole Miss is playing, they're one of the better teams in the country. They're playing some of the best football in the country. They have basically, they win this game. They won't be playing in the SEC championship unless Texas upset Texas A&M. Then I don't know how the tiebreakers work. But as of right now, just if they win, they're in the playoffs. They may be in the playoffs regardless, even at 11-2. I mean, at 10-2, you probably still make an argument. There's a high possibility, but you leave room for some doubt. But if they lose this game, Jeff, with all the Lane Kiffin stuff going on, like this game could be the absolute end of the Lane Kiffin era and the end of the season. Yeah. Because there's, like our good friend Walker has always been very connected to Ole Miss and in the rumblings of what's going on. And like from what he's heard, they basically have had this meeting and they're kind of tired of Lane Kiffin not either basically shutting down these LSU rumors, shutting down. And it seems like he's semi-entertaining the possibility of leaving Ole Miss. And they're kind of like, if they want him, like if you want to be gone, then be gone. And so the quickest way for them to be able to do that would be if Mississippi State was to upset Ole Miss on Friday. Yeah. Then you start to really like, you know what? We could justify, look, he's going to take this LSU job. He's going to take one of these jobs. We're going to encourage you to take one of these jobs. We're not going to fire you. But at the same time, like there's plenty of openings. These teams want you. Go take one of these jobs. We already have somebody that will look in the search. And, according to the people I've talked to, though, they already know what they want to do if Lane leaves. So like Ole Miss is already prepared for Lane to leave. And I think if Mississippi State was to upset Ole Miss at home in the Egg Bowl, that's always usually the worst. They always say about that rivalry, like the worst team sometimes usually is the team that's not doing as well that wins that game. Yeah. More often than not, that ends up being the outcome. And so like it could just really now you're talking about Ole Miss like not being in the playoffs because a 2-loss team who's probably not going to have their head coach for the playoff run, Ole Miss would not make the playoffs. Whereas
it would definitely hurt their
buzz, and he won and they lost 10-2. I still think you would make an argument for a Lane Kiffin all in led 10-2 team Ole Miss team to be in that playoff spot.
The only thing I think about that though is I just don't see it. I think Ole Miss is going to go down there, and I'm not buying into the Mississippi State. All year they've been telling me they're going to upset somebody, and they haven't got it done. They went toe-to-toe with, could it happen? Yeah. The Vegas kind of thinks it might happen. I think Ole Miss is they're favored less than 10 points. And the distraction of the coach and all that. But I don't know enough about this Ole Miss team to know if they the conversation they've had with their coach, if he's like, we're going to ride this out and see what we do in the playoffs before I leave. And they're all like, all right, coach, good enough. Or if this is I can't believe you're abandoning this situation, or if it's all BS and he's going to stay there. I'm not a Lane Kiffin fan as far as a person, just because this is who I think he is. So I guess I don't really care what he does, but this is always the guy that I've said Lane Kiffin is. And that's fine because in 2 years, everybody's gone. You're left with whatever's there. You got to do what's best for you in the future. And if going to Florida it gives you a better chance to win a national championship, then go. You don't owe anybody anything. But the distraction part of it's big. The rivalry game part of it's big. The Egg Bowl is always, like you said, it's always heated and weird things happen and people pee on, goalposts and lose games and all this stuff happens. So, that is interesting. It definitely would hurt their playoff chances. I think What we're going to find out though, Mo, is, and we talked, and we don't know if Texas can beat Texas A&M. I don't think they can, but I'm saying if they do, we don't know. Is it going to come down to the loss column again? Is it going? Because here's what we have these conversations every year, and every year Jeff says nothing matters but the loss column, and I've been right every year. It still comes down to if you have 3 losses, you can't get in over somebody that's got 2 losses. So it's just the end of the story. So is it going to matter what Texas does? And if Ole Miss loses, are they just going to go, nope, you got 2 losses, you're in? So basically, is Ole Miss already in is what I'm asking. And they might be.
Yeah, but that's also a tough conversation because I don't know, just for the simple fact, like, it's on the table for Lane to be gone. And so the college football playoff committee is
That
going
does
to
make it weird.
just because he doesn't necessarily leave before selection Sunday, like, if anybody ain't, if there's not going to be any souls who going to have some type of inside information before they make, the best decision for their product, it will be whether, if we put a 2-loss Ole Miss team who just lost to Mississippi State, but because they got 2 losses, we're going to put them in over a 3-loss Texas who beat Texas A&M. If for that argument, they're going to need to know, like, the guarantee that Lane Kiffin is going to be there for the run. He's going, if Ole Miss can get off a run, like, we need to know that Lane Kiffin is going to be the head coach and not plan on taking that LSU job, that Florida job, because the way the schedule for college football and the portal and signing day and everything, like, you need to take that job and get in the building sooner rather than later. So it's not like football where offensive coordinator could take the head coaching job in the middle of them being in the playoffs and not be the head coach until the offseason. Like, you got to get in there right away. So you can't take the head coaching position at LSU and then still be trying to finish off your run for the rest of the season. When Ole Miss, he's going to be up out of there.
Right. He'd have to leave. But then you're right. I think they might do that. And I think that would also be unfair. I don't think that's the right way to do it either.
But they did Florida State like that with injury. Like, I mean,
that was a 14 playoff. That was a 14 playoff. So yes, you're right. If they're deciding between 2 like teams, the team without the coach is absolutely going to get left out. I don't argue with that one bit. And I didn't argue with, I didn't agree with the Florida State thing, even though I still think it was the right thing to do. But I didn't agree with that either. But you're right. If it comes down to, like, here's the 2 teams we're talking about. One of them is Texas, who just beat Texas A&M. One of them is Ole Miss, who just lost to Mississippi State. Texas is getting in with their coach. I totally agree with that. But we're going to find out, because I don't think it's going to come down between 2 lost teams. I think most of them are going to get in. Maybe not. I guess we'll see. Then you got the weird stuff. This is what is messy about this, and I can't stand this one part of it, is these stupid conference championship games, because like Ohio State could get a loss, you know what I mean, at the end of the year, but have won 2 more games than Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like, Ole Miss could have 2 losses, but since they're not going to go to the SEC championship game, they're only going to have 2 losses, as to where, Texas has got it. Just it's not fair for these teams to have to play an extra game against good teams. That is the biggest flaw in college football right now, is that, you got these giant conferences and only 2 of the teams, or 4, 2 of the teams in each conference have to play this extra game, but they get judged on the loss. Like, you have to judge them based on the loss. And if not, then it's pointless. And so, like, that's really messing. That might help Ole Miss out. They'll be like, we only have 2 losses, we're in, instead of, it just doesn't, it's just not fair, so to speak. It's not an even way to do it.
Yeah, especially if you're the 2-loss team playing in the conference championship game. And if I lose this game, so at 10-2, but if I lose this game that I'm playing when nobody else is, I'm out of the playoffs. So I was better off being 10-2 sitting at home, as opposed to 10-2 and playing this game and being the loser. Like, it
just
seems
add another level of playoffs instead of this. There is no reason that Ohio State and Indiana should have to play an extra game, regardless of what happens this weekend. Neither one of those teams should have to play an extra game, especially against each other, if it gets to that point. That's dumb. We played great all year. You know what your reward is? Play again. That is so dumb, because they're both going to be in. Like, if they both go undefeated and play each other, both teams are in, guaranteed, probably in the top 4 still.
Yeah.
And so why play? Like, have 2 other teams have a play in, like, just have another round of playoffs, like, quote unquote wild card or whatever. And so when the good team, or the teams that have already done their job, are sitting home for an extra week, you have the 16 team in the country playing the 12 team, however you want to do it. you still have the same amount of games. You can't tell me that these conference championship games are big TV money anymore. There's no way that anybody cares about these games outside of if a big school's in it. Like if Ohio State's in it, I know people are going to watch. If it's Indiana, Oregon, it's not going to do great numbers. Nobody's going to care.
No, like people are going to find something to do better with their Saturday.
But you know what? Somebody said I was talking to over the weekend. But boy, if you had two teams playing for their playoff lives, if you had Texas play an extra game, with 3 losses against, we'll say Ole Miss loses Mississippi State, and then they have to play the next week, I'm watching that.
Right,
everything's on the line.
Anyway. Right, as opposed, and like you said, like if Ohio State's in it, and like for this year, like Ohio State playing in the Big Ten championship game, very circumstantial, but it will give a lot of numbers because Ohio State hasn't played in this game in a few years. It'll mean a lot to Ohio State fans to be playing in this game and winning, with an opportunity to win this game. But in the grand scheme of things of trying to win a national championship, this game no longer means what it used to mean.
Let me ask you, let me ask you as a rabid Ohio State fan, you love them and want to see them win a championship as much as me. Like we are the 2 examples. How many sprained ankles of a starter would you give up to beat Indiana? How many? I'm being honest.
Like beat Indiana in the Big Ten.
You're going to beat Indiana, but how many players could come out of that game with a lingering injury that you would say it was worth playing the Big Ten championship game? Because I'm betting your number is 0.
1 at the most.
At the most.
1. Like, and it depends on who
play a game against one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, it depends on who the one is. Like, if you told me we were just better off playing our backups and letting all our starters rest and losing that game, because now it just
becomes my point. So once you get to that point, then now that means the game's actually meaningless. It only means something in talking, as us saying we beat Indiana or them saying we beat Ohio State. But really, it means nothing if you care about winning championships. That's what I care about. If you don't care about winning championships, all you want to do is beat Indiana and shut them up, then great. I hope you have a great season, and we're talking about it. I want me and Mo to be sitting here in 2 months talking about winning back-to-back national championships.
Yeah, but I think
what Indiana does.
But for me, this year, for Ohio State, like I don't care whether they were playing Indiana. I don't care whether they were playing Oregon. I don't care whether they were lined up to play Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game. Like, for me, this year, like being undefeated up to this point, playing Michigan, and if you get to that, but you beat Michigan, so now you are 12-0 because we were 11-0 a couple times at this point. Like it wasn't like we were never 11-0 at the point. Kyle McCord was 11-0 going into the Michigan game. If you beat Michigan, you play in the Big Ten championship. Ryan Day hasn't won the Big Ten championship in some years, and some people can just not care. Like, hey, as long as he's going to turn around and win national championships, that's fine. But like within the Ryan Day and Ohio State, the one thing we got to get back to the top of the conference. We let Oregon come in last year and win the conference. And some people can say they don't care, but like Ohio State has been known not just to dominate on the national landscape against other people, but like they dominate the Big Ten. And so like for me, a whole nother team to come from the West Coast come in and in year 1, not only beat you in the regular season, but beat you. We got our lick back in the playoffs. It's there, but I think like you got to win. I'm not saying you got to win the Big Ten championship every year, but you can't be Ohio State, be the top tier team in the country and go and win a conference championship every 4 to 5 years.
And here's the thing. I would agree with you if the game meant something. That's my point. I totally agree if the game meant something. It means nothing. That's my problem. I mean, do you think you don't think Oregon was successful last season? I don't think you believe that. Because they won the Big Ten championship game and then they got thrashed in the first round of the playoffs. That was, but I'm saying if everybody was playing an extra game that was going to the playoffs and it was a form of playoff, like if you told me the winner of Ohio State, Indiana was the only team moving on, well, now we've got a game. Now we got something to care about. But as long as we're doing it the way we're doing it, it's just an exhibition game. It's really just in the way. It means zero. It's travel time. It takes away, it distracts you.
Putting the title of conference championship on it, to me, is what makes it mean, like for Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes this year, because you graduated an entire class that didn't win a conference championship, that didn't beat Michigan. Like we got to take that back at some point. I'm just saying take it back and get it over with this year. And then you can go and make this game as meaningless for the next 2 to 3 years. And
I can see that side of it.
But you got to take that back because, like, and yes, I know that class hey man, they probably wouldn't give it all up for how it ended and they won the national championship. I get that. But you also entered the playoffs with all that pressure because of what you did after losing to Michigan. After losing to Michigan with Will Howard and them, you had a class that did not beat Michigan or play in or win. Not just not win one, they didn't play in one, Jeff. They didn't play in a Big Ten championship or win one as a graduating class. So to me, you got to get that back. And once you beat Michigan, it's going to put you in that game. You don't go in that game and lose. You got to get that back. You got to get the crown of the conference championship back, and then go win back-to-back national titles.
Yeah, see, I put it up. I put it up there. I put it up there at the basketball conference championships. Like I couldn't tell you if Duke won one or not, and they won championships.
That's
just me. I'm just telling you, there's nothing you can do to convince me. I hate this game, and I hope that Ryan Day is the first coach to put his backups out there to play a conference championship game.
I don't. I
don't care. I do not care whatsoever.
If we're gonna get to the game, I don't want to not win the game.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. I don't want there to be a game. It's awful. They need to be done with them until they mean something.
Because just to play in that, or to say, like, to sit backups and say, or to play backups and be like, because if you don't win the national championship, then what did you not win the Big Ten championship for? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I get it, because not everybody.
But I think that it's because I believe firmly that it's a disadvantage to play another big game. I don't know why. I don't know how in any world it's an advantage to play a playoff team that you don't have to. So basically, Ohio State has to win 5 playoff games against playoff teams to win a national championship, and Oregon has to win 4. Like, that's 20% more good teams that Ohio State has to beat to win a national championship for nothing. Indiana. I say that, I'll say the same thing about Indiana. Their reward for the season is maybe playing Ohio State. Now listen, if you're Michigan, you're talking about a different conversation because they need to win out. So they need to beat Ohio State. Well, no, I think if they beat Ohio State, Oregon goes. So Oregon or Michigan, they really can't go and lose that game. So they would much rather not even get there. They would much rather just have their 2 losses and get voted in. But like, if you're a team like Michigan, like, you really want to get there and get yourself in the playoffs, and Ohio State's going to be there anyway. You know what I mean? So it's just not. It's not an even
with a win.
Michigan they need Oregon to lose, I believe. I think Michigan get in.
No, but I'm saying Michigan get in the playoffs if they win. They're a 2-loss team, right? They're sitting at 9-2.
Oh yeah, they have a chance to get in. They're ranked like 16 and beat the number 1 team in the country.
That would have to put them like. They have the argument almost over anybody that would be a 2-loss team, right? Because at that point, like, I have the best win, period. Like, you can rack up all your wins you got. I got the best win. I beat the best team. I beat the most dominant team all year that the college football playoff committee didn't hesitate to rank number 1 every week. So, like, they may not have ranked them unanimously, but like, in a week in, week out basis, on the regular season, Ohio State has been the number 1 team every week for the college football playoff committee and been number 1 ever since they beat Texas in the AP poll. So they've held that number 1 spot all year. So if Michigan were to win that game, they would have the best win on their resume of anybody. And so to me, in the argument of any 2-loss team, Michigan would almost, your resume as a 2-loss team, you would have to have some great wins, some really great wins for me to not count the fact that they just that beating the best team in the country meant something.
And it would depend, again, it's going to depend how the game looks. And then it's going to come down to probably an argument between because at that point, more than likely, Oregon's going to the Big Ten championship game. So the conversation would, you're coming down between Michigan. And so they're not really counting on that extra Big Ten team. They're counting on the 4. So, but again, they would have the right. I mean, they haven't had bad luck. They're going to have to have, lost to Oklahoma, lost to USC. Big deal.
Because who's the Big Ten?
Beat Ohio State.
Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, and that's probably it out the Big Ten, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Ohio State, Indiana.
Yeah, there's room for one more. So it definitely, because we were talking about USC, but they'll jump USC.
Yeah. USC lost to Oregon this week, so now they got 3 losses, so they're essentially out.
Oh yeah, you're right. Oh no, Michigan's definitely in.
They would be that 4th. Yeah, they would be that 4th team because now it'd be Ohio State, Indiana,
absolutely.
Oregon, and Michigan. So I think that really, like, if they win, I really think that gets them in because you just can't argue like and then it's what have you done for me lately? Well, what I have done is beat the number one team in the country.
Yeah.
Nobody else can say that. You could talk about all the Notre Dames and everybody coming into the season hot and the way they've looked.
Do you want to talk about the world where Ohio State gets beat and then they got a home game against Michigan in the playoffs? Because that's extremely possible.
But see, that would be,
the truth though. Here's my secret.
They wouldn't do that.
Here's my secret scenario that worked out last year for me. And I'm glad I was right because I'd have looked like a real chump if I wasn't right. But there's a world where Ohio State can lose and play North Texas at home. I'm just saying. The number one seed looks like they're going to play probably Oklahoma or Oregon or, Ole Miss, like somebody in that frame. But like the 5 or 6 seed is going to get just like last year, going to get a much better path through the playoffs. And it makes me sick, but it is what it is. There's nothing wrong with being number one team.
I do think you need to reseed after because
my son said the same thing. They need to reseed because
this will be the second year in a row where, to me, that's just actually an outcome. Oregon had the toughest road. Oregon got a bye week just to play Ohio State.
Yeah, it's going to happen again this year.
Their bye week was to play and at that time, you tell me I'm the number one team in the country, and then you looked at the other 3 teams of the bye weeks. Their reward was I got to play the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee, and both teams look dangerous. Like that's not a team I want to have to play. Neither one of those teams. We knew how talented Ohio State was. Plus, Oregon had already played them and only beat them by 1. You know how hard it is to beat the team twice, especially in college football. And then Tennessee was one of those teams where up until they played that game against Ohio State, they were just as likely to pop anybody as anybody else in the country. So you knew that was going to be your reward as opposed to had Ohio State won. And you really look at Ohio State as like the 3rd best team in the country as opposed to the 8th best team in the country. But because of the bye weeks and the conference championships, that's how we seeded it. Now we reseed. Now we have some matchups that make sense.
Yeah, I think you
can get the best possible matchups in the second round where everybody has a fair shot, just because, to be the number 1 seed and the 8 and 9 is really going to be probably the best matchup in the college football playoffs. The 8-9 matchup is probably going to be the best matchup, and the winner of that goes on to play. Yeah. Those are going to be that 8-9
right now. Your 8-9s right now. You're talking Ole Miss. You're talking Oklahoma. You're talking Oregon. You're talking possibly Texas. Like that's the quality of teams that are going to be above, like probably the ACC in North Texas. And that's who number 1 is going to get. The 5 seed is going to get it's all random. We're going to know next week, but I'm saying again, it's just another disadvantage to playing. So Ohio State's advantage is, hey, if we go undefeated and beat Michigan, guess what? We get to play the number 2 team in the country. Then guess what? We get to play the number 8 team in the country. Like it's a dumb setup. The way they and again, it's strictly because of these conference championship games that are stupid. They need to figure that out. They need to take conference championship week and make it mean something, because let me tell you, outside of unless a big name is in it, people don't care. Watch the, I don't know what else. Watch the Big 12 conference championship game. It's going to mean a ton. Ain't nobody watching it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they should be. That's a real important game,
and that's probably going to be a matchup between rematch between BYU and Texas Tech. So it is one of those where if it just meant more. So Jeff, I'm not going to keep us much longer. I do appreciate you for jumping on and kind of getting ready for the rivalry week. I'm available all week, so this will not be the last time that I have you on this week. As far as we were on Thanksgiving break, got a game Tuesday, and then I'm gone. I'm good for the rest of the week. Nice. So looking forward to that. But Jeff, I do appreciate you for
great, man,
for jumping on, man. It's always an honor to have you on and spend an hour to talk college football with you.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate everybody, and everybody else. I appreciate you for tuning in. I appreciate you for listening. Be tuned all week. We're going to have Garyon Conley come back on the show to talk about his experiences in the Michigan game and kind of what to expect and what the pressure is on. He said he got some thoughts, on this year's Ohio State Michigan game. So definitely going to have him on throughout the week. Going to be talking more basketball. Going to bring a head coach of, my high school team that I coach that I'm one of the assistants on. Going to have him on. We're going to have a sit down and talk about our season and where it's at so far in the season and things like that. So definitely got a lot of things while I got some time off. Going to be working on some things that are going to be a positive.
I want you to ask Gary about the conference championship game. You got to promise me.
Okay.
Ask him how he feels about it. Ask him how important it is.
Yeah, does anybody care about the conference championship? And he's probably going to be on Jeff's side because
I don't know that. I'm sure a player cares. You put a player in the game, they're going to care. But I would love to hear his thoughts on the importance of it now in the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, so I'll definitely make sure to ask him. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for listening. We will catch you on the next episode of the Coach Mo Murphy podcast.